And we're live for another episode of Howdy Partner here at AWS. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeong. I am a Partner Solutions Architect here at AWS. And we're going to have another amazing show today. With me is my co-host to the bottom. Hopefully I'm pointing at the right direction here. Is Eric. Eric, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Eric Vasquez. It's been a while since my last time on the show, but I'm happy to be here. And I think we have some special guests today that are going to be presenting something pretty cool.
Sounds good. Eric, great to have you back on board. But before we introduce our amazing guests here today, Eric, tell the audience, maybe the first-time viewers or anyone that's joining us today about, what Howdy Partner is, what we do here, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So Howdy Partner is obviously a Twitch episode or Twitch show where we try to highlight APM partners that are building solutions on AWS or running on AWS that are pretty interesting or have specific use cases for our customers. In this case, we have the Aviatrix team. This is open for a 100 level conversation all the way up to 400. In terms of background, you don't necessarily need a developer background to come join the show or ask questions. You could be in the TPM route. You could be in management. This show is open for everybody. So please feel free to jump in and answer all your questions. We'll be monitoring the chat window moving forward.
Sounds good. So I guess this is where we introduce our guests. So today, here with us, we have James and John from Aviatrix. You guys want to take a few seconds here to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm James Devine. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect at Aviatrix. Actually, I've been here about 7 months. I came over from AWS where I was a network specialist there. So it's really exciting to be able to be talking with you guys and you're kind of closing the gap between what we can do with Aviatrix capabilities and how we help our customers and AWS customers as well, kind of on the other side as a partner.
Yeah, and I'm John Smoker. I'm a customer solutions architect at Aviatrix. And I've been here about 6 months, I guess now. I actually came from Aviatrix customer. So I've been working with Aviatrix for about 3 years.
Sounds good. So today, as you audience could probably already tell, we're going to be diving deep into anything and everything networking. So Eric, just lead us off. You're the resident networking specialist that we have here from AWS. So talk a little bit about networking.
Yeah. So, all right, where should I start? Most people tend to say that, networking is a little bit confusing. But at the end of the day, networking is core to really anything when it comes to the cloud. It's going to be interconnecting, for example, two VPCs at a basic level, or maybe even interconnecting multiple regions around the world, making your workloads more accessible. Let's say, for example, customers in a wide range of varieties, right? One specific use case and one question that I do get a lot moving forward is how would I potentially connect multiple workloads running in different providers, right? And this is a common question that's popping up more and more. And I think today we could set the stage and look at one of the possible solutions for your workload moving forward and how you could optimize that on AWS. So maybe James and John, maybe you guys want to set the stage in terms of what we're going to talk about today for the offering, and then maybe we'll touch base later on with a hands-on demo.
Yeah, so I think we have some slides that we can get started with just to kind of go over what the platform is and what Aviatrix does in case people haven't heard about that before. And exactly touching on what you said, Eric, about getting the multi-cloud type of thing, and customers have real requirements to do that type of thing. So we'll talk through that and then get into live demos and coding and Slack integrations. We got a lot planned.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Sounds great. So let's get started with some presentation.
Awesome. Can you see the slide?
Yep, looks great on the side.
Awesome. So kind of like taking a step back and a higher level, enterprises really need more than just basic networking and security. And there's kind of been an evolution in networking. There was 20, 30 years ago, plus you had physical hardware, and that was most certainly Cisco. And then VMware entered the stage. And then we had another layer of virtualization, which added some complexities, but we could do VLANs and kind of get around that type of thing. And then VMware came out with their software-defined networking and started kind of moving us up the stack. And that's only gotten more and more interesting and complex with the cloud service providers, where you go back to the early days of VPC. Before there was even VPC and AWS, there was just a flat network, and that's evolved into now there's VPC, and VPC has been the de facto standard for so long. But there's still kind of this gap that exists between this kind of on-prem connectivity, what you can get within each cloud provider, and then how you connect them all together. And that's really where we come into play. So kind of being the experts, and we have people from actually almost all of these companies. We have people that have come from and we're building a platform to make it easy to do networking in the cloud and do it right, and also to do it best practice. There's constantly innovation. It's hard for me to keep up, even when I was at AWS, with all the new improvements and enhancements. And then on the customer side, it's so difficult to know, how do I use these services in a best practice way, and how should I be doing this? And that's what our platform seeks to do. We handle all of that. We do the deployment and make all of that easy in a repeatable fashion. And we've certainly gotten the attention of Gartner and other industry experts out there, even to the point of saying that we should be shortlisted if you're considering a consistent native experience. So I think things like this are really exciting and shows what we're doing and how we're making networking kind of a first-class citizen in all the cloud environments and to on-prem as well. Aviatrix is cloud networking. We're not just connecting to the cloud. It can be easy to think of us and see some things and come up with the conclusion that we're kind of just the edge connectivity, but we're just as much the multi-cloud networking and security platform. So whether it's SD-WAN integration, connecting in from private connectivity, or typical SaaS providers, we kind of play in all this space and make it easy to build out and deploy a network across all of these different constructs, from branch offices, remote data centers, all the way up into the cloud, and then handling that and appropriately connecting everything together. If we talk about what the Aviatrix cloud networking platform is, so first and foremost, we're not a software as a service provider or a managed service. We deploy within a customer's account, and we like to say it's theirs. They own the underlying EC2 instances and have kind of a single tenant instantiation of Aviatrix. So the first component, and we'll be getting into the demos and showcasing this, is the Aviatrix controller. This is kind of the master orchestrator that forms the control plane for the Aviatrix platform. It's multi-cloud aware. It knows best practices and how to deploy in the cloud, and it's kind of like the intelligent controller. That controller can then deploy gateways. So it's kind of a hub and spoke type of architecture. And then, of course, we can automate this all with Terraform, and we'll get into some ways that we can do that and showcase. We're a single Terraform provider, so we can coordinate and orchestrate all of that. So we do native constructs. We like to say cloud native plus. We do things the best practice in the cloud, and then make it easier to do and repeatable. We also have deep integration with third-party providers. So your traditional vendors that play in the network security space, like Fortinet, Checkpoint, Palo Alto, and F5, we make it super easy to integrate those firewalls. I know I've written blogs years ago about how you could integrate that, and it's typically complicated. There's many steps, there's route tables, there's so many moving pieces. and we make it easy, like literally click button easy to deploy these type of architectures and insert firewalls. And even to the newer service offerings like gateway load balancer, guard duty, we integrate and can orchestrate all of that type of kind of AWS best practice constructs. The fourth component is what we call Copilot, and this is our visibility and monitoring platform. So this gives you a bird's eye view of your entire network. You can see a network topology. We get flow information. All of our gateways are exporting flow data, and we'll get into this and show what that actually looks like. It's a pretty awesome way to get a holistic view of your network, regardless of when and where and how it's deployed. So we're a single or multi-cloud network and security platform. We have plenty of customers that are just all in AWS and are using AWS primarily. I think that's a majority of customers, with AWS being the kind of the cloud leader. We integrate with the AWS Transit Gateway, so that's certainly one way we have customers deploying our platform. So that works fine, just a single cloud, multi-account. When we deploy, we're highly available by default, so we deploy active gateways. We also can have our own transit. We call it the Aviatrix transit, which gives us a little bit more visibility and adds additional capability because we can actually export NetFlow from all of these devices and get a lot of traffic visibility. We can also extend multi-region, and our architecture is actually quite flexible. We can have multiple transits within the same region. We can tie them together. We can build some pretty complex architectures to meet customer requirements. And then we can have a repeatable architecture for multiple clouds. That's another thing our customers ask for, and we just provide the connectivity customers need. And then we can connect these all together and build this common data plane. And I think that's the real value that Aviatrix brings. By having this data plane, even though you're operating in a multi-tenant environment, you kind of can get a single tenant experience from a data plane perspective. And then we take security very seriously. Every one of these connection paths is encrypted. We do encryption by default. We can also do single cloud and multi-cloud network segmentation. So, like, for example, these turquoise can be all connected and between regions, between clouds have that.
And James, maybe just to step in real quick, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more as to why maybe someone would want their own data plane on AWS. What would be some reasons behind that?
Yeah, I think the visibility is a big thing. So since when NetFlow is flow summary traffic, it's kind of been an industry standard. So that a lot of network admins and network folks are used to. So we bring that into the cloud, and that offers a lot of capability for us because there's over 90 fields that are reported with NetFlow, and we log and report all of them. And we'll show what that looks like when we get into the demo. But another common use case, and especially in AWS and other clouds as well, is service insertion and chaining. Even with gateway load balancer, it can be difficult to know what's the best practice way to integrate the firewall. How do you automate it? How do you account for high availability? And we do that all as part of our platform. We'll set up the gateway load balancer. We'll put firewalls behind it. We can scale that in and out. There's a lot of really cool things that we do with our platform that customers really like and use a lot. FireNet is a huge use case for security. Then the enterprise operational visibility, so being able to see kind of across this entire estate, having that visibility. Then we also have secure cloud access. So we use our VPN. We can do secure ingress and egress. That's another common use case, being able to get control and visibility into your egress traffic. And then cloud native, our orchestration of the AWS Transit Gateway. And we're constantly working with AWS to make sure that we're staying up to speed and adapting new services as soon as they come out. Okay, to that point, some of the common use cases, we can do troubleshooting. We call that flight path. The data center to cloud extension and providing end-to-end encryption. That's another pretty common use case. multi-cloud transit, being able to speak to workloads might happen to be running in different cloud environments. Our egress FQDN filtering, a lot of customers for PCI compliance or just having control over their outbound traffic. Site to cloud VPN with overlapping CIDRs, another really big use case, especially in the SaaS space, having lots of kind of different disparate environments and being able to connect them all together. And then secure user access and the FireNet service insertion. So kind of these are some of the most common use cases, but there's certainly more that we do in our platform. So hopefully that was a quick high-level overview. Didn't want to do too many slides, but wanted to level set on that.
And I'm just curious myself, in terms of these encryption tunnels, what type of performance as a baseline would I, as a customer, if I was interested in using the offering, would I be able to expect here?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that we have in our platform. It's proprietary technology. We call it high performance encryption. It used to be called insane mode, but marketing people get involved, and now it's high performance encryption. So that's kind of how we do that. So we're able to spread IPsec encryption across multiple cores and drive line rate encryption.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add maybe a point to everything that James just mentioned, all of those use cases. Like I mentioned, I came from a customer. So my perspective from that angle was we had a lot of teams doing networking in different ways, and some were doing best practices and some were doing just whatever they wanted. Bringing in Aviatrix, as well as solving these use case problems for us, it was also a way for us to implement a standard for doing things that reached across the organization and got kind of everyone moving in the same direction.
John, would you say? Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just curious. Maybe you could just tell us some of these common use cases that you would basically just run into on an everyday basis. Maybe that was the reason why you joined the team. Maybe just give us a little background there.
Yeah, for sure. So we actually brought them in to the Aviatrix into our organization to solve user VPN. We had several VPNs. different teams were connecting in different ways to the cloud, and so we needed to solve that problem. We needed to solve the issue of once you were on the VPN, that you could get to any resource in our cloud, and so we wanted to bring some security to that. Aviatrix helped us with that, and then once we had the product in house, all of these other use cases just became clear that they applied to us as well. We saw, hey, egress FQDN is something that Aviatrix can solve for us. Today, all of our infrastructure can talk to anything on the internet. Well, let's fix that. Another big issue we had, like I said, you had all of these teams that were working with each other and doing networking in their own way. And if a team had a need to talk from their development and they were talking to another team and they said, oh, let me just hook into your production data. And they would just go ahead and set that up. And so we were able to then extend Aviatrix's reach to kind of bring some sanity and some order to that type of behavior. And we just kept, expanding use case after use case, and just working with the Aviatrix folks. I enjoyed, them being able to solve problems for me, and just being really easy to work with. And that's why I ended up deciding that I wanted to join them as a team.
Perfect. Thank you for the background there. Yeah, I've actually been noticing right here with some of these common use cases, overlapping IPs being an issue that I have some of my customers, some of my partners running into problems with. Maybe we don't need to go into it right now, but I want to touch base there as just a little bit more information as to how the offering can actually solve these problems.
Yeah, so our gateways actually, they support source NAT and destination NAT. So we can terminate either an IPsec or GRE connection on those, and then we have a few different offerings. One of them is it's map NAT, so it's pretty simple. You just define a virtual range, and the on-prem equipment has no idea that it's being natted. It thinks that it's talking to a real IP range when really it's a virtual range that we're one-to-one natting. Nice. Which is actually really easy to set up.
Yeah. All right. I don't see any questions so far. I think we could go ahead and maybe carry on for now.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just going to give a quick overview of or just to show you what our control plane looks like. Log us in here.
Give me one second.
Yeah, perfect. So when you log into our controller, the first thing you see is this overview page, and it's nice in that it just looks like I've got a little bit of lag here.
There we go. Better. I think that's much better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it gives you a nice overview into all of the things that you have deployed and a status. So you can see that right now we have 4 AWS gateways, 2 encrypted spokes, and they're all showing green check marks. That just hits you in the face as soon as you log in. We don't have a lot of infrastructure built out now because we're actually going to build infrastructure as we go along here. So we just have a few things deployed to this US East region. You can see a couple of items there. And as we build things out and connect things, you'll see that on the map actually, connected. So it's a good place to come just to kind of get that visualization. It also, you can see metrics right here from the controller. And so that's a good use. As my function at Aviatrix centers around automation. So I do most of my interaction with the controller via Terraform or via the API, but the controllers here giving you a nice user interface if you need that or want that. Everything that you can do in the user interface is in terms of deployment, configuration, or health monitoring. You can do those same things through the API, directly interacting with the API, or through Terraform as well. I always like to kind of highlight that point that whatever your use case is, whether it's you need hands-on, be able to look at something or automate it, we have a way to do that. And we've got the left-hand nav here just kind of walks you through each of the use cases where you can build out, your multi-cloud transit or your firewall network, site to cloud, open VPN. It's all right here at your fingertips. One of the things I always like to highlight as well is we have this export to Terraform. So let's say, maybe today you're not, your network team isn't fully up to speed with infrastructure as code, and you're under tight schedule and you need to get something deployed and you just want to get it done. You can always come back here and export that configuration, that real live configuration, into infrastructure as code, and then start managing it that way after the fact. And I think that's pretty cool. And then James also mentioned, some of our troubleshooting you can do right here from the controller, such as flight path. And this is great because it's taking the real infrastructure that you have point to point, and you can select this EC2 instance and that EC2 instance and simulate connectivity between those two. The controller will go out into your account and just enumerate security groups, NACLs, all of those things, and kind of highlight where a communication breakdown might be, and just present that for you, just simply and easily like that.
Well, I had a question. Personally, as somebody who comes more from a container space, is there a Aviatrix solution for something like EKS or ECS? Because I know we just talked about EC2 as of now. But
Yeah, so we do have some white papers and blog posts out there about how we can integrate with EKS and have Kubernetes kind of more on the ingress and controlling traffic. So that same type of visibility and insight into what's going on is super key. And in talking to some of our partners in the space, they've actually seen, even just looking at traffic, there's bad stuff. You download a container from the internet and deploy it into production, badness can ensue.
yeah, no, like you mentioned, always security is always an important part of pretty much every asset you have on the cloud. And I've seen a lot of cases where customers aren't fully aware of some of the things you just talked about. Actually, when you install an image or when you install containers, do you actually have fully secured environment? Most often cases not. So something like this would be a great use case for any kind of containers in Kubernetes workload, just to have that visibility. And some of this diagnostic tool would be very useful there as well. So appreciate the insight there.
Totally.
That's all I was going to show on the controller. James, do you want to give a run through on Copilot?
Yeah, sure. I was pulling up that. We have a white paper. There's also, let's see, this guy.
Yeah.
And I did a blog post there about different ways to do, kind of centralized ingress for EKS. There are a few options, and that actually is a good. Oh, I need to share my screen.
So while that's going on, just to recap, James talked a little bit about what Aviatrix does and what type of solution they provide. John just took us through the controller view, I guess sort of a portal or the GUI, just showing some of the capabilities that it has. And James right now is going to talk about Copilot. So we're constantly looking at the chat, so if the audience out there has any questions besides me and Eric or what we've already talked about, just drop it in the chat and we will get it up to our experts here. But
YOLO to just randomly deploying containers into the cloud.
Yeah, that's our one of our founders of the show, actually, and just coming in and checking us out. So hello to you.
Yeah, and I think that is like one of the great things of our platform is getting that visibility into what's going on in your network. So anything flowing through our gateways, we can peer in there, and I kind of showed it in that blog article that I posted in this chat. I think we can put it in the public chat. But yeah, so being able to get visibility into all of that traffic and visibility in general, and that's where Copilot comes in. This is our day 2 operations platform that gives visibility. So where the controller shows kind of where you go to do the actions like deploying, and we do have some troubleshooting steps in here as well that John was showing. In Copilot, we extend on that even more, so we can see bird's eye view. Yeah.
James, just to maybe just elaborate a little bit more there. When you say day 2, for maybe some of the people that aren't aware of what that means, can you just give us a brief description of what you're referring to?
Not the bad word day 2 about kind of the business and how it's going, but kind of day 2 in terms of operations, where you've gone and you've deployed all of your infrastructure, and now things like troubleshooting monitoring, capacity planning, those things all become important. How do you maintain and monitor and run your IT operations? And that's where kind of the day two in comes in when we say that. And Copilot's certainly a great tool to get that type of visibility.
Perfect. Thank you.
And as John was mentioning, so we have a pretty simple environment built out. We can see, the 3 nodes that we have here. Then we can see statistics on all of the infrastructure that we have deployed. And then we can dig in a step further, our topology view. And this is actually a request I got a lot when I was supporting customers at AWS, like, what does my network look like? And it's kind of like, well, there's some tools, and the tooling is getting better. There's tooling there now. But the nice thing that we're able to do here is kind of being able to provide a high-level view of everything and then drill in. So I can click out the infrastructure that we've built here already, and I can see subnets. I can see the individual instances. I can also see real-time latencies on all of my connectivity. So super helpful for troubleshooting. The first thing to go is if latency goes up, there's probably something going wrong. So you can kind of really easily see that. And then we can filter on this. Maybe we don't want to see VPCs. Maybe we don't want to see instances. We can kind of filter in, create views, and then go back to those views. So good way to see kind of the overall topology of a network.
Yeah, you'd be surprised to know that's how helpful that would be for enterprises out there. So, I mean, definitely for myself, but I could see for an enterprise level customer that has a lot of stuff in their environment would be a very good tool to have, just to see it from a topology standpoint.
And I think that also brings up another point there. Maybe you could tell us how many enterprise customers are currently using things like this.
Yeah, we have over 500 customers and growing. Actually, just cleared another round of funding, so we're continuing to grow. And the CEO likes to say, "Pour gasoline on the fire." So we're just releasing new features and functionality more and more, especially as we talk to customers and get more customers on the platform. We're taking the feedback and just making the product better and better every day.
And I'm sure we could share some case studies of some of the solutions that were built out for these enterprise customers and the results that you're seeing now.
Yeah, we have a lot of case studies, and our customers love to talk publicly about what they're doing with us. If you go to our website, just aviatrix.com, we have a number of customers that talk about why they're using us and some of the value add and how they're able to do their job better. In case in point, John, coming over from a customer.
Because of the existing system, just not saying either.
And I did have another question. So let's say maybe I'm not trying to deploy this via Terraform. I don't necessarily have any knowledge whatsoever. Is there maybe a professional services offering that could be made from the team in order to help some of these customers out? Would that be something that could be possible?
Yeah, we do have professional services that can help hand in hand with the customer. We also have we call it a CCOE, Cloud Center of Excellence, where we can do like staff augmentation type of work as well, and help get it deployed and make sure everything's built out right.
Nice, very nice. We do have a question in the chat. Someone's wondering, says, "Boy, if it's possible to get alerts in terms of any latency metrics."
Yeah, we can get alerts and notifications, and we'll go into that actually, talking about how you can get alerts from Copilot and have them trigger webhooks. So they can be email alerts, or we'll show it going directly to Slack and getting a notification in Slack. So that's a pretty cool thing that we can do. Yeah, and we show this here too. We can track our latency over time, and this may have been that we were just spinning something up, or it could be something that was anomalous. So once we get these metrics, we can see them and we can track them. Last day, and we haven't put this up. This hasn't been up too long. It's been a few days we've had this up, so we can track this over time, and having the data gives us the ability to dig in and monitor the network and get insights that you wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe every night at 12 latency goes up, and then you dig in and you're like, oh, there's a backup happening or something. That's why users are complaining at that point in the time. Having the data helps you correlate and make decisions.
Yeah, what about maintenance? Go ahead, Young.
No, go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just curious in terms of maintenance. Is there like a maybe email notification that goes out to customers in terms of upgrades that need to be done? How is that handled?
There's different components. So our controller, which is part of the data plane, there's an upgrade process for that because it's actively passing data. And Copilot's more of our view framework. So this gets updates automatically, and we're on a pretty aggressive release cycle for adding new features and functionality constantly.
Yeah, we do alert via email when new software releases are out, as well as in the controller, there's an alert bell that'll ring if there's a new release.
This guy here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, hopefully it's not too loud in terms of notifications or anything like that. Young, I think you had another question.
I was just gonna ask if there's any other metric that's being monitored other than latency, or is latency just like the most important part of this?
We just show that because we own the data plane here, so we have the visibility into the entire topology, so we're able to monitor and track this. And this is just one view in our topology. We can get through some of the others here. There's a lot that we can do in Copilot. And take all the data and show it in interesting ways. Another point on that is we have this, what we call topology replay. Because we have all of this topology information, we essentially have a cloud DVR here. So as changes happen within our architecture, we can see here, we can go in and zoom in at specific point in time, and then we'll highlight the nodes that changed. And we can even, from here, drill down to see what's actually changed inside as well. So, and we can track here. So maybe, I was having network problems after a change was pushed out. I can see real time here in the audit log that this is what happened and what changed. And then we can go in and we can track all the API calls and all the actions are logged as well. So we can go in and monitor that and kind of do root cause analysis for an outage or an event.
Wow, this is a really powerful tool. I guess one question I would have here is there any kind of auto remediation functionality here? So let's just say you're monitoring and there's something that happened that, maybe spiked the latency up to a certain threshold. Are you able to sort of, I guess, in this case, revert back to your original state, or maybe come up with some sort of a remediation step?
No, but that actually sounds like a great idea. Kind of self-healing type of. It could be hard to get context of like someone did they mean to delete that route, or was it malicious, or was it an accident? Yeah, I like that. Like kind of like an undo button to kind of walk things back.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of really depends on the use case or a particular pain point. But I guess that would be something that would be very cool to see if that can be in fact implemented.
Yeah, I mean, when you deploy our gateways in an HA configuration, if a gateway was to go down, the controller will notice that and try to route around that gateway. So in that sense, there's a little bit of self-healing. We also have another mode where if you're we call it single AZ HA. Where if you've only deployed a single gateway and it goes down, we'll spin up another one. And you often see that deployed in like dev workloads or use cases like that.
Gotcha. So in that case, even though it's single AZ, HA, those routing tables inside of the VPC, all that would be automatically handled by the controller for you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Exactly
pretty
right.
Yeah, so someone who's a dev that maybe isn't too comfortable making any networking changes wouldn't have to worry about things like that. It's all handled under the
100%.
box.
100%.
There's a few other things we wanted to get into here, and we're not going to show everything. There's you'd spend a whole time just covering that, but just wanted to show kind of some of the high level, like because the net flow data that we're exporting, we can see all of the flows going on throughout our environment. So we can see here, kind of what ports, what protocols, what port, and the application we identify, obviously 443 HTTPS, but things like that. We're able to get those insights. We also, because we're doing NetFlow, we can see things like TCP flags. We're doing IP geolocation, so we can see, wow, lots of countries are connecting into our test environment. How nice of them. Yeah, so we get all of that view, and in the geolocation, we can throw that all up on a map and see a heat map of where things are going. And even this could be telling for customers if your primary business is in North America and you're seeing kind of this type of heat map, that might be interesting and a data point. And you can go down time of day and scope in here. We can also see trends here.
Now, I was just going to say that was pretty fast to see how many people joined in from around the world. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then trends here too. And we can filter on all these fields if there was a specific IP address or a pair of IP addresses, and see the overall trends and where is our traffic going. And this could be something, it seems like spike in traffic might be something not to worry about, but it could be the sign of something bad. It could not be, or it might even be an application that you didn't know was very chatty on your network and is. So you get that kind of flow level view of everything going on. And then we can actually show the flows as well here, which kind of is a cool graph to see the top talkers on the network and see, who's, first of all, who's talking to what, and then at what, kind of how much throughput. And of course, we can see the raw records too if we want to get into each and every individual flow record. We can drill down into as well. It's going to take a while to load. I guess we have a lot in here. And then those 90 plus fields of NetFlow, this is where we can filter on them. So each and every one of these is metrics that we're getting for every flow going through the Aviatrix transit. And kind of since we were talking about and seeing all the countries coming in, one of the new features we released recently is Thread IQ. So it's actually taking, looking at the traffic going through our data plane and then seeing IP addresses that are kind of flagged as being malicious or suspect that you probably don't want things talking to. They could be Tor nodes. They could be just, bad things on the network out there on the internet. And we've had a few customers that have already deployed this and seen like, oh, I didn't know I had traffic going to that Tor network. That's probably something to investigate. So both inbound and outbound traffic, we monitor that and we can see all of that here. And I'm even surprised. We just set up an instance with an open security group. So this is all stuff just trying to come in from the internet. But we'll then take that same topology view and we can identify where that came into the network. So we know it came in on this gateway, and then I can zoom in and I can see this is where the traffic is coming in, and I can track it throughout my network. So it's really interesting, being able to have all of this flow data and being at a place in the data plane, we're able to get this deep insight and see kind of where things are going and how it's moving around the network. And then we can go into like the nitty gritty if we want to see, kind of the specifics and why it's a threat, and that type of information.
How far
Yeah,
back? Go ahead, John.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna tell a story. It just jogged my memory when we brought Aviatrix into my company. It was literally day one when we turned it on, and discovered some traffic from an application that we did not know was occurring, and went right to that application's development manager and said, "Hey, do you know that this is that this is going on?" And they found that they just had legacy code that somebody had created years ago and just hadn't been shut off. And they were able to shut it off. So having that visibility is a powerful thing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the number one requests that I usually get from customers is how do I gain more visibility into my network? And obviously, there's resources that AWS offers, but here it's a little bit more specific to multi-cloud. But yeah, visibility is huge. It's something that customers want. There's definitely a need for it. I was curious here, how far back can we look at some of these events?
As much storage as there is on the underlying instance, we'll log up to that. So that's kind of like, and we provide settings that you can go in and tune the knobs depending on how much visibility you want. But as much storage is allocated, we'll fill it up with the data.
Perfect.
I just love how there seems to be a severe event going on all over the world in this map. So, at least from a visibility standpoint, at least you know something's going wrong, and you should probably investigate.
Yeah. Go back. Let's see. Say the last hour or something just to see and zoom in. It's interesting to see. I first pulled this up in one of my environments and was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, even in the last hour we had, yeah. Yeah, and then I mean we're continuing to innovate on this. So right now it's just showing, kind of showing the information, and then we'll plan to be able to actually take action and do more with this because we're in the control plane. So it's really exciting to see how quickly we come up with new features and then rapidly innovate on them. Kind of the same way AWS does too with their platform.
I think AM was saying that Austin looks fine. So AM again, original owner of the show, creator, still in Texas, I believe. So I think he's giving a shout out over there.
All right. Well, looks great. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But I believe, and I guess before we jump to anything further, Eric, just for the audience that might just be joining in right now, just kind of give us a recap of the last hour or so of our show.
Yeah, so during the last hour, we've been talking about network visibility, even in multi-cloud scenarios. We've been going over monitoring some of the use cases with the team, but we're now about to move on to a hands-on demo. So the infrastructure is code deployment, and we'll actually be able to see and answer some of the questions that came up in the chat window regarding some notifications and alerts we could set up with the controller and Copilot.
Sounds great. So I believe that's you, John, that will show us how all this works using Terraform.
Right. Yeah. Yep. If you could share my screen.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to do something to the code here, and then I'm going to execute it, and then I'll go back and kind of talk through the code and what it's doing. While I'm talking through it, it'll actually be building that infrastructure. So you can see here that the US East 1 is uncommented, and that's because that infrastructure we were just looking at through Copilot, you saw a transit node and a couple of spokes. There was a public subnet filtering gateway. All of that infrastructure there was built with this Terraform. And so what I'm going to do is just replicate that across a few other regions in AWS. So let's just do maybe this. I don't think I need this one. After I was building this, I started to performance test our platform, just seeing how many regions I could build out and concurrently. All right, so I've saved that. Let me jump over here and just do a Terraform apply.
Let's see, the screen isn't quite showing. Oh, no, I think, yep, that'll do it.
Okay. Yeah, so I just did a Terraform apply. It's showing us that it's going to do, add 53 resources. I'm just going to kick this off. It's going to take a few minutes, and then I'll walk you through the code just to show you, what we're doing.
Sounds good. And just for the audience out there, the repo, John has it available on his repo that's shown on the screen right now. It's pretty much all the code that he'll be showing today.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so the controller Copilot, I did build those with Terraform. They're not part of this repo. I have a separate workflow that builds lab environments for me that I can then purpose for whatever I need to do. So that was built through that, but everything else is this Terraform code here. So I just want to walk through here. Let's start with the providers. If you're not familiar with Terraform, you kind of define certain providers. This is just code that knows how to talk to the APIs of those things. And so you can see that, I'm primarily leveraging our Terraform provider. This is a registered provider with HashiCorp out there on the Terraform registry. And then I'm also using AWS provider. The only thing I'm doing with that is building some EC2 instances, which I'll get to later. But most of it, even the VPCs and subnets, route tables, I'm actually building that with the Aviatrix provider. This main Terraform file here, you saw me uncomment these regions. I just kind of extracted that out into some variables just to make it easy so I wouldn't have to uncomment big blocks of code. But primarily what's going on here is I've got a regional network module, right? And a transit gateway peering resource. These two things. If we look into the regional network module, what you can see that I'm doing is, yes, I'm building a transit VPC with one of our transit gateways, 2 spoke VPCs with spoke gateways, and connecting those spokes to the transit. So 3 VPCs in each region with connectivity inside of that region. So anything you would deploy in those VPCs would be able to talk to any other VPC just in that region. It's back at this transit peering that you then connect region to region. And now all of the VPCs, regardless of the region, are going to be able to talk to each other across the network. On top of that, at the same time, we have this concept of segmentation and the building of security domains. And actually, I want to just hop out to just pause right there and hop out to our controller. I was just mentioning, just try and get my screen to refresh. I was mentioning that Everything you can do in Terraform, you can do in the controller, you can do against the API, and you can see the controller is showing the work that's being done. So all of those gateways, are here showing up in the UI just as if you had created them with the UI. I'm also applying segmentation. So creating security domains for each of these regions, and then binding them together such that I'm defining that, this region can talk to that region. This region cannot talk to this region. So maybe just to walk through this quickly, I'm defining a security domain for the spoke 1 and another security domain for the spoke 2. And then associating each of those with their respective transits, right? And then from there, I can create connection policies that say this can talk to that, or this can talk to that other thing. And again, I'm doing that for spoke 1 can talk to these things, and spoke 2 can talk to these other things. And essentially, at the end of all of this, what I'm doing is anything in East 1 can talk to any other region, but the regions themselves, the other regions themselves, can't talk to each other. I also have a bit of code here that's doing an IAM policy that I'm applying to any EC2 instances that I deploy here in this demo, such that I can use SSM to SSH to those instances. So just a simple bit of code here to do that. And then I mentioned those some EC2 instances that I was going to that I'm going to deploy later. I've got that code commented. But again, this is a module that I've created to create an EC2 instance. But if you look into that module, let's see here. It's not only creating the instance itself, right? But also defining a security group, and wrapping that in with the ingress and egress rules. So just packaging it into a module allows me to do all of that work in one block of code. One of the things I meant to mention when I was showing the regional network code that I'm executing, that module, is that I'm actually leveraging Aviatrix modules to do these things. So there's an AWS transit module that we publish in the Terraform registry that just does all of those things that you need to create a transit network. So you don't have to code all of that yourself. You just do it. And you could see from that I was passing into that module a CIDR. And then inside the module, I'm just slicing that CIDR up across each of these, the transit network, the spoke networks. I just point that out because it's really powerful when you're using infrastructure as code to build your network, because you get that consistency every time you build it. So I'm building, each region here, and regardless of what CIDR that I build it with, it's going to get sliced up in the same way. And just to maybe drive that point home a little bit more, like I say, when I was a customer, I was using this similar pattern. We would allocate each team their own, Class B network address. And so you come to learn, oh, this team is this Class B, this team is that Class B. And then if you use this type of calculation under the covers for all of the VPC creation that they're doing, you start to learn also like, oh, this is always dev, no matter what team it is. It's always you can identify dev, staging, production just from the CIDR that's being used because you've done that with code. So checking back in, that Terraform apply that I did has completed. So let's maybe hop out to our controller, and you can see here that there are no where there were 9 tasks occurring, there are none now. And I'm going to just refresh this dashboard. And so now you can see we have 13 AWS gateways, 8 encrypted spokes, 5 transit peerings. You can see that our map now shows all of these different regions, whereas before we were just in US East, and the connectivity between them.
I think it's really powerful. In the course of like 8 minutes, we built out a global network. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's the power of Aviatrix and infrastructure as code, right? It's a good combination. And similar, if we come over into Copilot and look at that topology view, you can see the same thing. And you can see here, one of the peerings hasn't fully come up yet. Give it a minute and it'll go green as well. And there it is.
So now we have full connectivity in almost 4 regions completely, all in under 10 minutes. That's pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. Wow.
I mean, I think it's a sentiment that's being shared with the audience here. A lot of really positive response here. And personally, I think this is pretty amazing. I don't want to add on top of what Eric and John, you and James said, so I will stop there. But really really powerful what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and now you can see as maybe if I zoom in a little bit here, just it takes a few minutes, but now you can see some of that latency come back, and maybe between some of these regions that are a little bit further apart, you see that a little bit higher, but you get that, you get that feedback right from the get-go.
Maybe we could touch base on. No, I'll leave that for a little bit later. I'll just let you carry on, John, for now.
Yeah, I think at this point that was all I was going to show here. We're going to deploy some more code here in a little bit, but that's all I had for now. If you do want to ask a question, or I'll throw it back to James to carry on.
Mainly it was just working between clouds, but I think James, you wanted to show the triggers now and the notifications.
Yeah, let's get into that so we don't go. We could talk about some of this stuff forever, but I really wanted to show the notifications are pretty cool. Switch to my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to show this too because I had this up. We had no segments before, and the code that John pushed out in Terraform built out this entire segmented architecture, and we can define segments, what can talk to what. This works across regions, within the same region, across clouds as well. We can build out these segments and have that network provable correctness and ensure that, even if someone has an open security group or an open NACL, doesn't matter. We're not going to let the traffic flow through because it's in a separate security domain. So an additional layer of the onion to peel back from a security perspective, which is really nice. And then here we can see which of the segments can talk to each other. That's pretty nice.
In terms of the segmentation, do you sometimes see customers maybe creating these segments and still maybe inspecting the traffic either way? Maybe that's a requirement that they have. And even if they have the segmentation, they just have to inspect the traffic either way.
Yeah, and we can actually still do that. We're very granular with how we define our inspection policies. So if I wanted to add an additional layer and say that we need to go through like a set of Palo Alto firewalls or another type of firewall provider, we can take all that traffic and funnel it through, even for the east-west traffic as well as the north-south. We can even have separate fleets of north-south and east-west traffic inspection instances as well. So really flexible in how customers can deploy the architecture, and we facilitate either way. So we just either update the Terraform code or deploy it and configure it appropriately through the UI. There's options to do that. Getting into the notifications, this notification tab here. So this is where we can define an alert. So we can call it, let's call it, uncreatively call it alert. So these are the metrics that we can the conditions that we can trigger on today. This will be increasing very shortly in the future. So we'll be able to see even more dimensions. But this is what we have today. So I'm going to take a look at gateway status. And then I can receive either receive a separate notification for each host or not. Oh, I don't have. I need to set the actual alert first. This is where some coding comes in. We can actually get really granular in what actually goes in. So this is just a template, and we're using a webhook. So I'll just paste in. This is kind of the template. You can see you can format it like new lines, times, and take things like the alert status, the timestamp, and the message. We can add in additional things too, like if we want a button to pop up with remediation actions, that's something that can come up as well, or maybe have the button that triggers some type of action. So this is all, we have kind of a guide to how to set this up. But aside from that, we just need name and then a webhook. And here is documentation takes you directly to the link. So I have to. So I've already set up, what you do in Slack is you set up a new application. So I've set up this one and called it alerts. I could create a new one if I'd like as well. But once you set up that application, you can configure a number of things about it. And one of those is webhooks. So that gives you, fumbling around here, I'm not a Slack admin. The webhook URL that I've set this up previously, I just need to copy this. I have this defined and set to go to my testing channel. So we can define multiple webhooks. Maybe there's different teams that want to see different types of notifications. We can go in and configure that and set that URL. And we can also put a secret here too. I'm just doing this quickly. The webhook URL. And I can click test here if I want to test this out. So it's successful. I can see that popped up.
Like you got something on test.
Yeah, in testing. This is just the generic one that we have. It just says high CPU utilization. That just, so you can test it out and see that it works and is formatted correctly before you go in here and click save. So we have that webhook set up. Now we can go into our notification. And here's where we add the recipient. That'll be Slack. And we'll just save it. And Jen, do you have the console up? I'm not sure if I'm signed into that.
I do.
Oh,
Let me know. Stop it.
okay, I got it. I was just gonna kill. I wasn't sure if I've closed my browser and still had the temporary access credentials. So let's just kill this guy. And we probably won't be able to because we have no. So as soon as that pulls, we'll get a notification in here that the gateway has gone down because I did the gateway status changes. It'll go to Slack. I'll just, let's see, is it still powering down?
It looks like it's still stopping. Might take a few more seconds.
Yeah, there's a polling interval. So, and actually I didn't reduce my polling interval to be really small. So it can be upwards of around a minute depending when the event comes and when it happens. But you can see we can just get these notifications directly into Slack. This was high CPU. I did the one I set up here was for the when anytime a gateway status changes, which in a production environment you'd want to have that type of alerting, so we can just pull that over and trigger. And I mean, last time I was in ops, being able to use Slack to get notifications instead of just tens of hundreds of emails is much better. Also being able to target them, like you can have specific events go to channels where you don't have like a noisy channel that maybe there's things that you don't care about, where there's other channels where a gateway's down. This is problematic.
Yeah, that would be the only time I'd like to get a whole channel alert on Slack. So
Yeah.
something like that for sure.
And looks like we have a question on the chat. So let me surface that on here. Sysboy asks, presumably on the latency metric, you can set some thresholds on various links.
I don't know if that's a metric we have today. We will, but that will be one that we have coming soon to be able to kind of alert and monitor on those metrics, because we have them all built into kind of our overall. We can see performance and all the metrics that we have in here. So any of the metrics that we have in here, we're expanding what we do there, but. Lots of metrics here. Some of the ones that actually are interesting related to AWS here, which I actually meant to show earlier. There's actually packets per second limits, connection tracking, link local, like things to the .2 resolver within the VPC, and some other low-level metrics that actually manifest themselves in really difficult to troubleshoot ways. I've seen weeks or months sometimes going back and forth with support on some of these metrics. Our gateways actually export all of those metrics, and we're collecting them. And that can be indicative of, maybe you're hitting the packet per second limit and you need to size to a larger instance, and you're seeing like, kind of intermittent packet loss, or you're exceeding the bandwidth for a specific instance type. These kind of low level metrics that bite customers, we're able to collect those and then can, view them and make sure they're not a problem. And you don't think about it often because generally workloads work within the limits. But when you start talking about moving large amounts of data and getting into network appliances, that's when you start to hit those and badness ensues.
Yeah, I think that's pretty useful. I've ran into that problem actually. I think it was 2 months ago, and it took me some time to figure it out. So this would have been useful in that case. Would have been able to solve this pretty easily, or at least quicker than what I did last time.
Exactly. And as I was coming into Aviatrix and learning all that, I'm like, man, this is some cool stuff. That's what kind of encouraged me to come over. All the great stuff we're doing in terms of networking and things you wouldn't even think. Like if you're not in the networking community, you'd be like, I didn't know that there was a metric that was exposed.
So speaking, since we are sort of kind of going in that direction, I'm curious to know if there is any kind of public roadmap for some of the things you guys might be adding on to what you already have. I'm a little curious to know.
Yeah, we don't have like a public roadmap per se, but we're going to continue to innovate and add new features. Kind of the AWS approach too, where we listen to what our customers want and put out features. Like, Thread IQ is a good example. We put that out there and customers are already giving us feedback and telling us things that they'd like to see from it. And given the way that we're able to quickly innovate and push code changes out, we can actually do that quickly and add those features and functionalities that our customers ask us for. Very similar to how AWS does that, getting customer feedback and driving the product to meet customer requirements.
So is that feedback channel, is that through, enterprise support, or is there a community kind of built around Aviatrix users, or how does that work?
Kind of across the board. We have an online community. Solutions architects can do that. The account teams that support, kind of across the board, we can get that feedback, and we look for that feedback. And also enterprise engagement. We have EBCs with customers too to collect that feedback at the kind of the C level and make sure that makes that back to leadership.
Sounds good. And I'm just piling on questions here, but how would there's actually a question.
Yeah, I think there's a few questions in the chat window right now.
Yeah, let me just surface the latest one. Sysboy again. Appreciate you asking many questions today. Do you have some sort of Prometheus or Datadog type of exporter to pull or push these metrics into other tools? And we talked about Slack, sort of an alert type of thing, but it looks like they're looking to kind of take these metrics out into, presumably their favorite tool and kind of do more analysis on top of that. If you have some insights on that.
Yeah, so in our controller, we have the ability to, under our logging settings, we can choose, and we actually do have integration with Datadog. So we have a Datadog agent that can be toggled on, and we can run through that. And actually, a nice thing about our controllers, you might be like, oh, what does that do? Pretty much everywhere we have these links that go directly to our documentation, and then you can dig in and see kind of how that integration works and get more information on a certain feature or knob, which is really, really great, especially as you're going through and trying to figure out what does what where.
And it looks like you have all the other integrations that I was going to maybe Splunk, Sumo Logic, and I don't know what else you have, but it seems like you have a pretty extensive integration with a lot of these industry-leading solutions. So that's great to see.
Yeah, definitely. Customers ask for that type of stuff, and then we go and we make it happen, which is a nice thing. Kind of being a startup, being able to kind of kind of pivot and take the product where we want it to go, and make changes quickly.
Sounds good. I don't know if I covered all the questions, Eric. Let me know if I missed any on the chat. Again, the audience, if you have any more questions, now would be a great time to drop it in the chat while we have these experts on here.
Yeah, someone was, if you could pull that most recent question up, Jeong, Z Brow, he was actually thinking if we could touch base on the previous diagram and where we showed latency, maybe we could show what other type of metrics we could draw from.
Yeah, our
Or
topology, this primarily shows the latency of the links because this is kind of a topographic view. But that is a good question. I was mentioning that the metrics on the nodes. There's this diagnostic tab here where we can click, and this gives us instance troubleshooting. So things like ping, trace route, connectivity. We can see all the active sessions on the gateway. And then we can see interface statistics for each of the interfaces on the specific gateway. So it really gives us kind of a way to drill down, and even going from like a very high level view to quickly getting down to the individual details that we want.
Zebra, hopefully that answers your question. Let me just double check and make sure we haven't missed any questions here. But generally, a lot of positive responses of the demo today, so I really appreciate. Yeah, AM left a while back, but said awesome demo, and we have other audience on the chat just kind of giving very positive response. Personally, I learned a lot as well. I'm not a networking expert, so my knowledge is a little limited here, but just the amount of information that you can pull out of all these diagrams and the depth of metrics, it was really good to see. And quite honestly, I haven't really seen any solution out there with this depth of information. So really appreciate you two jumping on today to show us how this works. Just kind of to wrap everything up, I guess, and this probably was answered in the beginning of the show, but how would somebody who's interested in using Aviatrix, whether that's small shops, enterprises, individuals, kind of get started with Aviatrix?
Sure. And do we have time for one more demo? I think John had some code changes, or do we want to just kind of?
Oh, yeah, no, we definitely have some time. I'm sorry, I thought this was everything. So, John, if you had something else,
we could go on for a long time, but no, John had some great demo plans.
Yeah, no worries.
John has another piece of demo for everyone here in the chat. I think everyone is going to enjoy the next one. So, John, maybe let's kick that off real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about egress FQDN, and again, this was another use case that I deployed as a customer. Just a great way to get visibility in and control your outbound, your outbound connectivity. So I was going to implement that into this environment we've already built, and I've done this a little bit differently than the first bit of code that I have, and I'll explain how and why. But yeah, if you can share my screen. Okay. So again, maybe I'll do the same thing, kick it off, then talk about the code. So this is a completely separate pipeline to that other code, and in this case, instead of just running it locally on my machine, I'm actually running it on Terraform Cloud. Okay, so that's just Terraform's SaaS offering for managing your infrastructure state and implementing your infrastructure. And so it looks the same from the look and feel from my console is the same, but there's a key distinction, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But let me just say yes to this. And what I'm doing here is I am back at the controller under our security section and egress control. I'm creating a tag, which is just a firewall rules for egress. And I should have shown you this before I executed the code because it's already here. But if I take a look at it, okay, no data to display. That's good. So maybe it didn't pull this up right away. So let me refresh that. And oh yeah, it's still working on it. Okay, taking longer than I thought. Anyway, so yeah, it's going to go out here. It's going to create these egress rules and then apply those egress rules to some of our gateways. And there you can see one of the egress rules is shown up, allowing TCP 443 to asterisk.amazonaws.com. And I believe there's one more rule. Okay. Let's just close that. There we go. Okay. So I've created a tag. I have allowed egress to these two destinations. And I've applied it to, if I list the gateways, I've applied it to these three gateways. Okay. So let me go out and now back to my original code. I now want to deploy some EC2 instances so that I can test this out. So just 3 EC2 instances in those 3 regions that I'm now controlling egress to. So just a few minutes for this to come up. And so I'll just walk you through what I'm going to do here is I'll hop out on the EC2 instance, test some of this connectivity, demonstrate that it's, I can get to the things that I've defined that I can get to. I cannot get to the things that I haven't defined that I can get to. And then we'll make some changes. And when I make that change, instead of applying Terraform, I've actually built a pipeline for implementing that change. Whereas I can update the code, so I'm going to make a change to the code and push that code into GitHub, and the act of my pushing that code is going to trigger GitHub Actions to execute that in Terraform Cloud and apply that change to the real infrastructure. So let's see how quickly my EC2 instances are up for me to connect to. Okay. There's my workload, EC2. Again, just using Session Manager to connect. Awesome. Okay, so one of the things I said I defined that I can egress to is anything at aviatrix.com. Come on screen. There you go. And looks like I can get to it. If I try to connect to anything else, let's just try something you wouldn't want to get to. And you can see that I'm getting no love there. or actually maybe even better, something I'm going to add. Also getting no response. All right, so back to my code. So this is the code for those FQDN rules. I mentioned that we created a tag that applied to these gateways, and we added TCP rules and UDP rules. But I broke out the definition for that out from this code, the actual resource code. I broke out those rules into this separate file of just variables. And the reason I did that was just to make it easy. A lot of times when you're doing something like this, when you have code like this, you have folks who need to update this or maybe make a change that aren't the network engineers, right? You have application developers creating applications that have egress needs, and they know what roles they need to have. And so kind of extracting this into its own file that a developer can come in and maybe do a pull request against your repository, update, define what they need to talk to, and then have some sort of process by which you have maybe security engineers who would want to review that pull request before it actually gets implemented. And this is just a nice, clean way to do that code, right? And make it easy for them, so they don't have to learn how to write Terraform code. They just know, hey, I need to talk to this resource on this port. Simple. So I've updated my code locally, and I'm just going to go here and I'm going to commit that change. And then I'm going to push that code into the main branch. And as I mentioned, just the act of pushing that code is going to trigger GitHub Actions to invoke Terraform Cloud, to invoke the Aviatrix Terraform provider, and implement this change in our network. So come out here to GitHub, where I have this code. Just refresh this page. You can see the changes that I made, adding Terraform, ONUG, and DNS with Google have been implemented. If I take a look at GitHub Actions, you can actually see that it is now executing on this updated FQDN rules. It's done a Terraform plan, and now it's working on the Terraform apply. If I expand the Terraform plan, you can see the changes that it thinks it needs to make. Adding 3 rules. Here's your DNS Google, your asterisk Terraform, and asterisk ONUG. So 3 FQDN rules. The apply is occurring now. You can see it creating. Just like I had done, manually previously from my workstation, but now this is all automated just based off of a change to code. And so now with the apply complete, I expect that if I go out to the controller and refresh this and look at now all of those changes have actually been implemented in the controller. So then let's head back over to our instance. And then this time when I try to curl against Terraform IO, I'm there because the rule's been implemented. And like I say, this egress FQDN use case is a really good place to implement this type of GitOps workflow, where you can have this collaboration between development teams that have egress needs, security teams that want to be the gatekeeper for those changes, and network infrastructure folks who are responsible for applying those changes. And you can do that all within just simple pull request, code owners, and merge requests of those changes into the main branch. Completely hands off.
What about exceptions? Is there a way to handle a use case like that?
Yeah, this was a very kind of simplified workflow where I pushed directly into the main branch. Typically, the way you would do that, I mentioned kind of having a pull request process, and based on the pull request, I've actually have it here in the code. Let's just take a look at that, just so I can kind of describe. I commented it in the code. So GitHub Actions is all based, what it's doing is also based on code here. And so you would have different things occur upon a pull request. And basically what you would do is you would do that Terraform plan, so you would know what changes are going to occur before they ever occurred. And then you would pull that information back into the pull request. So if somebody's looking over the pull request and saying, hey, do I want to approve this, approve this pull request? Not only are you seeing what the code changes are, you're going to see what Terraform says it's going to do. So you have both of those pieces of information before you would ever get to actually apply. But if there was a failure, you would just exit out of the process there in GitHub Actions, and so it's you would be alerted to that fact through GitHub. You wouldn't just think that everything was fine just because you merged that code, and then you could take action from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Maybe you could give people a few more seconds to see if there's any questions so far.
And we could also, I guess, give a recap of everything that we've kind of gone over. So again, if you're joining us very late, it's almost at the end of the show, but in case you missed it, we are here with James and John from Aviatrix. We talked about, having visibility, monitoring, observability over your networking topology and just overall networking environment within AWS. We went through tools like Copilot and the controller, I guess dashboard reporter, if you will, kind of showing the different components that make up the visibility there. And from the basic, I believe it was just one region, right, John? We kind of built out.
Started with one region.
Yeah, started one region. We added components to different regions through Terraform, which is just a small piece of the code that you're looking at on screen at the moment. And then saw how we spent about 8 or 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes of deploying and being able to see all the changes on Copilot. So that was great. And we just we just now took a look at the FQDN and kind of being able to, as a different employee or different role within a company, you can have a sort of as a security specialist or as a developer have a different ways to kind of push changes through your code base and be able to reflect changes. Did I miss anything, Eric? I think that was a pretty good recap. I may have missed things here and there.
No, I think that was a pretty good recap. Just filtering based on FQDN. But everything else, I think you covered pretty well. And not sure, maybe John has another demo for us. Let's see.
Was there something you were looking for?
No. No, I'm good. I do think there's one question here that we haven't touched base on. Let's see. Young, do you happen to know if Yasir's question was answered previously?
You know what? I don't think so. So let's just. So the question is, any native IDS integration module or a native IDS?
Yeah, so our if IDS meaning intrusion detection system, we certainly have capabilities built into the platform. Threat Guard is our capability there, and we also have integration with Guard Duty, so we can actually take the AWS Guard Duty findings and use them as rules in our gateways for ingress traffic to deny it in AWS using the ingress routing feature. Which we show an architecture of. It's actually a really nice feature where we can take traffic and using ingress routing, we're steering it from an internet gateway directly to our gateways. And then from there, we can pass the traffic on to the back end, be it an application load balancer, a network load balancer, or EC2 instances, and provide that type of ingress protection based on the Guard Duty findings, which is actually really nice to take that IDS capability that AWS provides with Guard Duty and turn it into an IPS, intrusion prevention system, where we're proactively blocking those findings.
So hopefully that answered the question there. Let me see if there's any other question here. I am answering the last question just through the chat. So if you have any final questions, that'll be a great time to post them on the chat. It looks like we have one other question from Level Up Josh. Asks, how does this compare to network firewall and transit gateway, or is it complementary?
Yep. So we're working on doing network firewall integration in the future. We've heard that from customers that was something they wanted to see. So we're looking at that. We also provide a transit gateway orchestration feature. So we were a launch partner on Transit Gateway and came up with a lot of automation there to make it easy and add features like being able to approve routes that you learn through BGP and add a number of capabilities. We make the segmentation easier. We also carry the segmentation between regions and between transit gateways, which is another really big feature that customers really like and use that orchestration for. So I would say that stuff like that is complementary. We also have our own transit, which we see customers move more towards if they want to get that visibility and the additional troubleshooting capabilities that come along with bringing the Aviatrix transit.
Excellent. So I don't think there's any other question. So before I cut you off, John, before you did your final demo, I kind of wanted to know, as a somebody who's watching this, getting a little bit taste of how powerful this Aviatrix can be. and what a lot of the things that you could really be exposed to by using it. How would somebody approach, whether it be enterprise, small shops, individuals, how would they think about getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways. I mean, we have our ACE program. That's really powerful. ACE Associate is a self-study. I don't know, James, did you have a slide to go with this?
Yeah, if you can pop my screen up.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, I'll go. I started at the right-hand side, but let's start at the left-hand side. So info at aviatrix.com, docs.aviatrix.com, and just aviatrix.com, little chat bot in the right-hand, bottom right-hand corner. We also have customized architectural design sessions that we offer, scheduled in person or virtual. And then, as I was mentioning, our ACE certification program is starting out with the self-paced ACE Associate, but there's also instructor-led classes available as well.
And it did, yeah, just to add on to that, it does seem like there's a few people that would like to get into contact with the team. And right here, we kind of have that information for you. If you need help, you need to reach out to James or John. Pretty sure we also have some of their email aliases and other ways for you to contact them if that's something that you're interested in.
And I dropped my LinkedIn,
Absolutely.
feel free to connect and reach out.
Sounds good. So as audience, if you just watched our session and you're more than interested in learning more, getting started, you have your resources here. You have James and John, who, at least James, have dropped in their personal information. John, if you want to, feel free. If not, that's okay. But plenty of ways to get in contact with the folks at Aviatrix to get started. So with that said, I don't see any final questions on the chat today. So I think that should wrap up our session today with Aviatrix. Again, James and John, I really appreciate both of you coming on. Personally, like I said earlier in the show, I learned quite a bit. And I'm sure, given the positive audience response, I think a lot of people took away a lot from certainly not only your information about Aviatrix, but especially from the demo and how everything works. So I really want to appreciate the two of you jumping on. And as always, Eric, I also appreciate you hopping on as the host, the co-host, or the networking expert to help us facilitate this discussion. So with that said, before we exit, and we'll do our outro in a little bit, just as a housekeeping stuff. Howdy Partner obviously is here every Monday and Wednesdays, 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be back, probably not myself or Eric, but with our host, our group of our wonderful hosts. We'll be back next week with another amazing show. So tune in for that in the next week and the following weeks. That said, John and James, thank you for hopping on again. And as part of our tradition, so to speak, on Howdy Partner, we usually like to end with a phrase. So we usually have a group, 3 phrases, and we would defer to you to choose the best one or the one that you want to end the show with. So the choices are, and you can probably see the theme as soon as I tell you the first one. So number 1, we have Giddy Up. Number 2, we have Happy Trails. Or number 3, see y'all next time. So maybe either of you can pick one or discuss amongst yourself. Eric and I have said all three of them plenty of times, so we'll leave it up to you.
Giddy up. That sounds like a good way to end it with some energy.
Any objections, John? Or
Yeah, let's go with that.
all right, so giddy up it is. So on a count of three, we'll do giddy up and we'll sign off. All right, let's go. In 3, 2, 1.
Giddy up.
Giddy up.
All right, thanks everyone, and tune it back in next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.